Hello, good morning everyone. Happy Wednesday. Today is a good day. We're alive and meeting this new day with new possibilities, with perhaps a new intention or a familiar intention. And here in Minnesota, it's a cool day. It's a really cool, overcast day. And in some ways, though the sun is not shining, I have this sense of it's invigorating as I kind of feel into that chill. And I feel alive and feel ready. I see Darlene is logged on. Good morning, Darlene. How are you doing? Hopefully a few others can join us for this exploration today on recovering a sense of self-protection. This is a really engaging topic on our road to creative recovery and recovering our creative imagination, one of our inner freedoms. I think today marks going on 3 weeks of these morning sessions, so just being reflective of that and realizing this, these morning reflections on inner freedom and meditation, they in and of themselves are part of creative imagination. There was something that was inspired in me, and I didn't dismiss it as fancy or something just to a possibility. It came to me a number of times, and I've learned through practice and through study that to pay attention and to go from that imagination to start to learn to obey those impulses, those creative impulses, and then start mapping out a plan to bring them into reality. So just reflective of that even these morning sessions, these live sessions were in and of themselves our creative imagination brought into reality. So let's begin here with our discussion here on recovering a sense of self-protection. I think this is a really, like I said, a really engaging topic. It has the potential for tremendous self-awareness, to open up all kinds of self-awareness as far as how we're showing up, how we block our creativity, and I think that is really, really powerful. I see Brittany is on. Good morning, Brittany. So the first topic here is called Dangers of the Trail with regard to creativity, and the author goes into what she calls our creative blocking devices. And she talks about the most common ways that we block our creativity. In other words, when all of a sudden we start to feel more, we start to feel these creative impulses, we start to become alive to our creativity, to our art that we want to bring into the world. The most common ways that we block are through food, alcohol, drugs, painful love. In other words, we grab that painful thought of that painful relationship or that former lover that hurt us, and we block there. Or there's sex addiction. And then the last one, which I think might be really fitting for our time of shelter in place and social distancing, is a real seductive block, which is workaholism. And so she talks about how we the moment we start to feel too much of our creativity, too much aliveness in us, and we start to feel that kind of shaky, unfamiliar feeling, that we get scared. We get scared by coming alive ourselves, and so what we do to block that creativity and that energy is that we go many times unconsciously and we devour, we block it with food, with rich, sugary, fatty, salty food, and that way we start to numb that shaky, energetic feeling, or we numb ourselves with alcohol or drugs, because that brings us back to something that feels more safe and familiar. Or immediately we look for that painful thought that reminds us of painful love. How somebody hurt us once, and then once we start to chew on that thought, we start to numb ourselves to our creativity. Or some people just numb themselves with sex addiction, where they're just constantly going from one romantic interlude to the next, but never feeling the aliveness within themselves. And the last one, I think maybe the real focal point here is workaholism. She really addresses that workaholism has this, what's this phrase that I really love here? Workaholism can be seductive because it looks so noble on the surface, and it has this unassailable quality of duty to it. And so on the surface, it's almost unarguable, like, well, I'm working, I'm providing. And that takes some self-awareness and self-reflection to ask ourselves, are we working so hard because we are in a mindset of service and contribution and providing for our loved ones? Or are we doing it so we don't have to face and feel those things that are edgy for us? And that takes a moment of self-reflection to recognize that being busy at work can numb us from our aliveness and our creative impulses. So think about, I just encourage all of us just to think, what are the ways that we block ourselves so that we can numb the aliveness that we're not ready to feel. Just think about that for a moment. Not asking anybody to declare anything, just to reflect that, and maybe in your morning journaling to write about that. And if it's edgy to write about it, write about it. And if you want to keep it private, write in detail about those things, some of those private things. And if you don't have to keep it in a journal, you can take it and those pages, tear them up, shred them, burn them, and just kind of let them go. But the key is to get these, make these things that are unconscious conscious, so that we can become aware of them, and then that's what initiates the change, and the change process starts to happen. The one that I really want to just share some reflections on is workaholism. And I think that for those of us that have been engaged with the creative blocking device of workaholism, I think that's a real that's one that is dissolving for many people right now. I mean, we're asked not to work, not to go outside of our homes. And I think that can start to, when we're no longer blocking or numbing with incessant work, we can start to feel more, and we can start to feel more of our creative impulses. our yearnings, our longings, things that were just completely anesthetized and numbed from the constant duties and schedules and routines of work. And this is an opportunity to listen in, to feel those creative impulses, and not just to feel them, but start to listen to them and start to notice, what they're telling you, what change has an opportunity to be born when there is this space and quiet to do so. And it can get really edgy. And so the caution is, if you can't work, not to this. I guess the caution and the self-awareness is to, when we're not working so much to numb ourselves, to be aware of what the other blocks are: food, alcohol, drugs, painful love, sex addiction, and not to go unconsciously and grab another block to numb yourselves. And we can do that. We can numb ourselves. And so just be aware there. If you find yourself drifting to another block, then you can say, hey, here I go. I'm about to numb myself with something else. What if I was to pay attention to here on this creative impulse and start to act on it? And what could happen? How could you change? This is certainly the exploration that I'm in. How am I feeling these creative impulses in me, and not just numbing them with one of the blocks that is familiar to me, and then just numb it so it's extinguished, and then I don't actually take action on it. So I'm in that inquiry myself, and as I'm in that inquiry, and because of that self-awareness, I'm feeling even more, and those creative impulses are going from creative impulses to inspired images in my imagination, and they're starting to move into detailed planning to execute and bring these creative projects into the world. And I believe that's in all of us. This creativity is just under the surface. But the first step is to know, to become self-aware on how we block as human beings, so that when we start to move in that direction, we can put that pause button on, we can recenter and make a different choice. The last phrase I'd like to just share here is this concept of the void. And this concept of the void goes a little deeper into our creativity and blocking and addiction. And I think it's, and I've heard this come up in many different areas of my study, from coaching studies to the Artist's Way study to other teachings. And no matter what the teaching is, it always seems to come back to this, the actual word, the void. And it relates to the blocks, the blocking devices we use. It relates to the blocking devices we get attached to, the addictions that we create in ourselves. And there was a phrase I heard years ago that the whatever our ego gets attached to is a substitute for the life that it cannot feel. I'll say that again. Whatever our egos get attached to and perhaps form an addiction around is a substitute for the life, the creative energy that we cannot feel within ourselves. And so what does that mean? Well, this is how I understand it. This is how I've worked with it, is if I see this part of myself that is getting overly addicted or attached to something externally, I can become aware of that, and I can walk that backwards with my self-awareness to say, okay, well, what is that compulsion or addiction or blocking device? What does that revealing to me about where I'm numbing myself and not allowing myself to feel my creative impulses? So I'll ask myself that question. I start with what I see on the outside, and then I walk it back to my internal experience. This is also helpful in the area of like wellness and fitness. Often a big conversation around wellness and fitness is around weight loss, and so often I'll observe somebody, if I observe that food is one of their blocking devices. Whenever they start to feel too much, they start to go to food to numb themselves. Can ask them, if we walk that backwards, where is the void within you? What can't you feel? And when you start to feel, you move to food in order to numb that, so that you don't have to feel that creative energy, that creative impulse. Or it could be alcohol, or it could be painful love that people keep going back to over and over again, or just continually working. If someone's a hard worker, but like they work too hard, and it almost has become so noticeable. The question is, what is that workaholism revealing that you're trying to numb, or what we're trying to numb, is the more introspective question. So as we go through this day and this month, be aware of blocking devices, attachments to food, alcohol, painful memories of painful love, sex addiction, and workaholism. And the invitation is to become aware and walk those attachments backwards, and see if we can start to feel that creative life energy within ourselves, and have the courage to feel it and let it do its work of moving us into new actions and new ways of being, and move us into our aliveness. The next thing, or the last thing on this topic I'd like to just share from the Artist's Way book, is just to read bringing up workaholism. She has a great little quiz in here, and I guess shared before, I think, now with shelter in place and people being furloughed and laid off, and the blocking device of workaholism is fading away. So maybe a good time to just explore some of these questions. This is a workaholism quiz, and I'll read these 20 and just let these questions land and see if they stir something in you. Number 1, I work outside office hours, seldom, often, never. 2, I cancel dates with loved ones to do more work, seldom, often, or never. 3, I postpone outings until the deadline is over. Do you do that seldomly, often, or never? And you can, at the end of each one of these questions, you can rate yourself seldom, often, or never. Number 3, number 4, I take work with me on the weekends. Number 5, I take work with me on vacations. Evaluate yourself there. I take vacations. My intimates complain I always work. You gotta rate yourself, seldom, often, never. I try to do two things at once, seldom, often, never. I allow myself free time between projects. Rate yourself there. 10, I allow myself to achieve closure on tasks. 11, I procrastinate in finishing up the last loose ends, seldom, often, or never. I set out to do one job and start 3 more at the same time. Number 13, I work in the evenings during family time, seldom, often, never. I allow calls to interrupt and lengthen my workday, seldom, often, never. I prioritize my day to include an hour of creative play, seldom, often, never. 16, I place my creative dreams before my work. 17, I fall in with others' plans and fill my free time with their agendas, seldom, often, never. 18, I allow myself downtime to do nothing. 19, I use the word deadline to describe and rationalize my workload. And number 20, going somewhere, even to dinner, with a notebook or my work numbers is something I do, seldom, often, never. So I thought that was helpful and fitting for our times, to start to do a little self-assessment on, are we blocking? Had we been blocking ourselves with work a little bit, a medium amount, or a lot? And now with some of us having more free time, how can we become more self-aware? So when we do, some of us do go back to being more socially connected at work, that we have that awareness going in. The next topic I'd just like to share on this, recovering a sense of self-protection, is just talking about creative droughts, that we all go through these times of drought where it doesn't seem like, as Julia Cameron says, that we can even find for ourselves even a trickle of grace. And when we go through those creative droughts, they're kind of a natural ebb and flow of life. Things go through stages of expansion and contraction, creative drought is just a time of creative contraction that's necessary in order for the next expansion to start to emerge. And that's when often people will abandon their practices, specifically the writing meditation, the morning pages. And I can tell you from experience that when I've been through creative droughts, I listened to her words, and I trusted that they were roadworthy. And so when I'm feeling a sense of creative drought, then I continue to write those 3 to 4 pages of stream of consciousness writing, and write about my frustrations, whatever it is, whatever comes into my mind, I get down on the page, and I keep the energy moving. I keep the energy, even if it's just a trickle, I keep that moving, and that's powerful. She talks about fame and how, fame, to be careful in order to protect yourself, is to watch out. It can be a spiritual drug, being known or having some identity that is being applauded, and that's all fine, but not to confuse a temporary sense of fame with who you truly are. That that is not the essence of who you are. Is just your temporary popularity. That may come into a time where you're bringing in your creativity and your projects, and it may receive a lot of recognition and a lot of fame, and that's a wonderful thing, and you can enjoy that. And just remembering that even fame and recognition is impermanent. This too shall pass. And when we recognize that, then we can enjoy it without getting attached to it. And in that way, we don't have to suffer when it shifts and changes. We can come back to that inner freedom that we're exploring and cultivating, that is changeless. It is always there for us, regardless of our external circumstances. I was listening to a podcast or YouTube video with Eckhart Tolle, and I liked his metaphor. He talked about building our foundation, building our house on the rock versus building it on the sand. He brought forward a Bible story about the man who dug deep, built his house on the rock, and then the foolish man who built his house on the sand. And when the adversity came, storms, floods, rain, that the house on the sand was washed away, but the house on the rock stood and was strong and was able to weather the storm. And so that's one way we can understand the cultivation of our inner freedom between stimulus and response is, if we build our sense of self and sense of strength and resilience on our inner strength, self-awareness, imagination, our independent will, the cultivation of our conscience, that is changeless, and that all kinds of adversity can happen in the outside world, and it will. Even after this global challenge is over, there will be something else. This outside world is a world of impermanence, and it's constantly changing. If we build that interiority, that sense of strength from within that is changeless, then when life disrupts and the outside world starts to bring adversity and change, we can go to a place that is that's solid, and that in a place where we can bring forth our creativity, and we can connect to that changeless sense of self, or that essence identity, that then can adapt quickly and readily with the outside changes. And the last topic I'd just like to share is on competition, with recovering a sense of self-protection, and just to be cautious of competition. And competition is based in an innate sense of comparison yourself to another. And I'll talk about that in a later morning reflection. But competition, once we understand that it's based in comparison, ourselves to someone or something else, we just realize we want to use it very skillfully, and oftentimes very sparingly. Again, competition pulls us, if we use it too much, pulls us into the external world where we have the least amount of choice, and it pulls us out of our internal experience, which is around self-awareness and creativity and the cultivation and the enjoyment of process. Competition overused can get us too focused, our attention too focused on final form and achievement, and we lose the enjoyment of the process. So we have to be discerning there and decide how much competition we're going to allow into our life. My personal standard is that enough competition that it's life-giving, but not so that it's not so much that I lose my enjoyment of the process. If I'm losing my enjoyment of the process, then I know that my attention is too far outward on either I'm too focused on the achievement of the external goal that I've set for myself, or I'm too focused on winning. And that's my time to recenter and come back to the enjoyment of the process as primary, and achievement and winning as secondary or even tertiary. So those are my reflections this morning on the artist's way and the chapter on recovering a sense of self-protection. And I hope they have been helpful. I hope they have stirred some self-awareness in you. I know even as I share, I'm enriched as I share. Awarenesses start to open up for me even as I share my reflection. So with that, let's begin to center ourselves and prepare for our meditation this morning. Again, if the meditations each morning are 1 minute, and if you feel the impulse to sit longer, again, when the final chime rings, feel free to just continue to sit for as long as you feel like you need to this morning. You don't have to complete just because I'm guiding that. So let's check in with mood. Notice what your mood is right now, and notice the most dominant sensation. So my mood is curious, and the most dominant sensation that I feel right now in this room is cold. So I'm feeling into that. I'm going deeper than my thinking mind, and I'm sensing the temperature of the room. I'm noticing my mood of curiosity. Notice where you are with mood and sensation right now. Then let's relax our eyes, softening your eyes. Relax your jaw and chin. Relaxing your neck. Bring your shoulders up, clench your fists, and release. And when we do those contractions, imagine that's like a garden hose. You're pinching off a garden hose. It's building up water pressure, and when you release the garden hose, the crimp in the water hose, there's a rush of water that comes out. Similarly, when we release that muscular contraction, we're trying to pay attention to that rush of sensation that happens. So bring your shoulders up, pinch the garden hose, use that metaphor, and release. Opening your chest, softening your diaphragm, relaxing your belly. Relaxing your pelvic muscles, pelvic floor muscles. You can even do that contraction technique and contract, pull up and in, and then release. Pull your pelvis up and in, and release and feel. Then relaxing your thighs and knees, calves and shins, feet and toes, and just creating more space for the emotion that you're feeling, the sensations that you're feeling. And you might even notice your mood has shifted, or the sensations have shifted. And let's begin by centering in our felt sense of shape. So let's center in our length. So feeling that centeredness in your length. Feeling yourself as a bridge between heaven and earth. So straightening in our vertical line and settling at the same time. Let's take a deep breath in through the crown of our head. Pull that breath through our body with our attention and imagination, and exhale out through your feet and hands. Taking a deep breath in through your feet and hands. Pull that breath through, exhale out through the crown of your head. And just feel that centeredness in your somatic length. Let's bring our attention to our somatic width from left to right, the social emotional plane. So this balance, this felt sense of the balance between self and others. You can just rock side to side on your sit bones or your feet. Just feel into that, find a balance point there. We can take this symbolic posture, left hand on your chest, right hand on your belly, and just feeling, bringing attention to self and your commitment to your own self-growth, your own self-care, your own creative impulses and longings. Feel the surface of your skin. Feel your personal boundaries. You decide who comes in, who stays at a distance. You decide what you say yes to, what you say no to, what you negotiate. And extending out a little further, extending out to someone perhaps in your home. Maybe they're in the other room. Extending out maybe to maybe even a pet. Just extending out some other living thing. Extending. Still feeling yourself, extending out to others. Maybe extending out to nature. Extending out to a tree. Or some part of nature that's captivating your attention right now. Extending out to a loved one, or a friend or an ally that's not physically with you, imagining that they're there with you, standing with you. And here I'm extending out right now, and with my imagination, and I'm extending out and imagining all of you that are live here. I'm imagining we're all in this circle together. Darlene, Henrietta and Kathy, Brittany, Jen and Cheryl. Just imagining you're all standing here as though we're, in my imagination, we're all standing in the yoga room over at Eden Prairie. Just imagining that. The power of imagination. Let's take a deep breath in through our left hand. Pull that breath through your body and exhale out your right. Take a deep breath in from your right hand and exhale out your left hand. Relaxing your arms down, feeling a sense of centeredness in your length and your width. And let's center again in our depth, the space in front of us and the space behind us. Start with our back body, just leaning into the space behind us, imagining that as our history, all the experiences that have shaped us, all the people that have supported us. And then leaning forward and just feeling into the space in front of us, where life is calling us. The space of our creative visions, our longings, our yearnings, creative projects. And let's find a centered place between our past at our back and our future at our front. Let's take a deep breath in with our imagination and attention about 10 feet in front of us. Deep breath in. Pull that breath through and exhale out your back. And deep breath in from your back. Pull that breath through your body, exhale out through your front. One more time, deep breath in from your front. And exhale out your back. Centering in our somatic depth. Just imagine as you create this felt sense of balance here. Imagine, just feel in that at your back that you're connected to the wisdom of your experience, but we're not living there. We're being informed and directed and guided by a creative vision. It's like a compass in our life directing us forward, and we're not living there. In other words, we're not hoping that one day we'll be peaceful or happy when we arrive at this future point. We're collecting all our presence, all our power into this moment, the only moment that ever really is. Let's bring attention and energy to our right hand. Feel the temperature of it and the shape. Place it below our navel. And as we feel our hand on our belly, as we feel that and allow that to help us to move out of our thinking self down into our intuitive feeling self. And let's take 3 deep breaths together. And a deep breath into our center. And a second breath, a deep breath into our felt sense of purpose. And a third breath, a deep breath into the mystery, that which is beyond our knowing. Inhale. Invite everyone to just close your eyes and start to enter that inner space of freedom, drawing your attention inward. And as we begin here, set your intention. Remind yourself, for the sake of what, that you're doing this practice. Enough. These few words are enough. If not these words, this breath. If not this breath, this sitting here. This opening to the life we have refused again and again. Until now. Until now. enough. These words, these few words are enough. If not these words, then this breath. If not this breath, this sitting here. This opening to the life, this creative life, we have refused again and again, until now. Until now. And as we close our practice today, remind yourself again, for the sake of what? And then on your next exhale, very slowly and very gently, begin to move your arms and legs. And very slowly and very gently, begin to open your eyes and let the outside world come back in again. Take a moment to recognize your mood right now, and if that's shifted since the beginning of our time. And become present to creative images and impulses that may have came up for you. And then also perhaps in reflection, in that meditation, become aware of perhaps images or impulses that you are becoming attached to. That align with those creative blocks that we shared at the very beginning and we discussed. And as you were sitting, was your mind moving to one of those blocks? Were images of food coming up, or were there images of moments where you would be drinking alcohol, or a painful love experience came up for you, or getting to work, feeling uneasy about sitting here, and images of just getting busy and wanting to start to work again. That can be, the meditation can be a great microcosm to start to notice how our mind, even in small ways, starts to bring up images of these blocking devices. It starts the small attachments. And the meditation can be a great place to notice them and then let them go, release them. You can release them just by imagining they come to you and you're just releasing them. Some people will use, in some traditions, they'll use a word that helps them, when they say that word, release from that attachment. Just the first thing is to become aware, like, I was already in that meditation, already in images of doing more work or getting more things done. That can be a great opening into how you can start to soften workaholism, for example. Self-awareness. So thank you all for sharing the time this morning. It's a blessing to share. There's an Eastern phrase that the teacher and the taught make the teaching, and that's really how I hold me sharing my reflections. Is I'm imagining all of you in this room with me, and something emerges out of that connection, and that is the teaching, and that's the self-awareness. And so thank you all for helping to create that today and this morning. Tomorrow, there are 2 more chapters in this creativity book, and one is on tomorrow is recovering a sense of autonomy, and then the following day, I believe that's the last one, which is recovering a sense of faith, and then we'll be moving into reflections on independent will, skillful action, and ways that we can take the self-awareness and take our creative imagination and actual practical steps on how to start to move it into the world in an intentional, planful way. And so I'm excited to share those reflections and curious about what will emerge in that sharing and in those meditations. So blessings to you on all your days ahead, each one of you, and may we all bring a sense of self-protection and become aware of ways that we block, and in that awareness, recenter, release ourselves from that block, and tie into our aliveness. So bye for now, and we'll see you tomorrow.